Hey everyone, this is Jack with the Cardboard Herald. As you probably know, on this channel, we typically talk about board games and board game related things, and this is something a little bit different today, though it's tangentially related. The Escape Game, a chain of escape room outlets, has contacted me to see if I would do a review of one of their digital products. As you can imagine, escape rooms are one of the industries that have been greatly affected by the pandemic and subsequent quarantine, and they've adapted to this new world by having digital releases. Essentially, the escape room in a box type of thing, except the box is your computer and you can play remotely with friends instead of at the table. And I was like, of course, this sounds great. I want more opportunities to hang out with my friends that I don't really get to see during the pandemic. And I have some familiarity with the Escape Game as a company because the first escape room I ever did was when I was in Florida during Dice Tower Con 2017, which now I'm nostalgic for conventions. I knew that I needed a daring crew of puzzle solvers in order to tackle this strange beast that I was going to be confronting in a format that I wasn't familiar with. So I turned to some of the smartest people I know who have the grit and sleuthing capabilities in order to endure this. That being my wife, as well as our Pandemic Legacy crew, Sarah and Miko, who you may have seen on this channel as part of the review for Pandemic Rapid Response. They have played through so many games of Pandemic. They're excellent at cooperative games, or in this case, cooperative puzzles. Now, the format for playing one of these as designed by the Escape Game is that one person is the pilot, they own the game, and then over Zoom or some other sharing software, you have your crew sign in and then you share a screen with them. Now, you're going to get several documents up front as well as throughout the time in which you're playing one of these things, and you can just distribute those to your crew. I did that via email, or you can do it via text. You can also, just through the screen share, bring up any of the documents and look at them together. But there is a lot of advantage of having things done in parallel, and it's nice for people to be able to actually kind of navigate their own thing as they're working on it, even if only one person has the overall hub system. Unlike most escape games, this doesn't have a clock going, so you have as much time to work with it as you need and as much time as you and your friends have patience in order to tackle the puzzle. For a frame of reference, it took us about an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 20 minutes to get through the entirety of the thing. Our call was about 2 hours. The initial 20 minutes of that was figuring out how we were going to make this all work in a system that made sense for us. And then afterwards, just a lot of talking about like our impressions and what we wanted to do after that. The game we specifically played was the Rogue Scientist 1990, which is essentially themed like an episode of The X-Files taking place in the early 90s in a very different world where you are agents working for some sort of federal body, maybe CIA or FBI. You're going to be investigating a group of people who may be involved with a university and figuring out what their plot is and who specifically you're working for. I'm not going to get into any spoilers for it, but the story does unfold, and as you solve individual puzzles, more and more revelations are going to happen, and your contact with this federal body is going to be contacting you via videos that pop up with these greater revelations and escalation of thematic tension as you get closer and closer to unraveling the full mystery. Now, the puzzles, as you play them, initially you have kind of one puzzle that's going to lead you into a broader scope of what's going on, and you have several documents that allow you to solve this first one. And then once you get through that, you're going to have several puzzles and then individual documents as they relate to that. And then it kind of scopes back inward to one central thing that almost has like a point and click adventure vibe. Now, as I mentioned, one person is driving this, and in this case, that was me. And I was worried at first that this was going to create a situation where other people didn't feel like they were able to contribute as much, or they weren't as able to be involved in certain aspects, like we would have to, have one person quarterbacking everything, like myself being the driver. But it turned out that by being able to distribute the documents to everyone, we were all able to participate, and it ended up being that all of us had individual revelations, or, were able to see through the matrix and solve different puzzles. The puzzles were very different in nature. Some of them were logic puzzles. Some of them were encrypted messages. Some of them needed to just see details and line things up together. Some of it was, you need to be able to see the forest for the trees type of situations. None of it was too particularly difficult. I've done a lot of escape room in a box type of things since doing the Cardboard Herald. And I've talked about in the past, like if you watch our review of the Emerald Flame by Post Curious, we rely on hints a lot of the time. And while there is a really competent hint system in here that if you get stuck, you can rely on, that doesn't fully spoil anything or doesn't automatically solve everything for you, our group didn't need to rely on that at all in order to get through. And I think there was only really one puzzle where we were all kind of stuck until that aha moment came, which probably was only being stuck for about 5 minutes. So we solved it, we saved the day, and we had a lot of fun. After the call, we talked about how we were actually really happy with how it turned out, and that we planned on doing some more of these. My overall impressions, if I were to break this down into like my favorite things and my criticisms, one, there are a couple puzzles that seemed like they would be difficult to navigate if you had certain forms of being colorblind. The second thing is the puzzles themselves, very few of them felt like they were completely recontextualizing anything that we were doing. One of my favorite things about a really good escape room or escape room in a box is when you have that moment where you push through and suddenly you have such a new level of understanding that just makes everything else appear in a new way. And that's really difficult to pull off. And I think that there's some give and take in a system like this where you don't want to make it so overwhelmingly challenging that someone can't figure this out in a night, as opposed to some other types of games in this vein may want you to be able to work on this for a couple days and a couple sessions and revisit certain things. But as a product, it didn't have those really big revelatory wow moments. And the last thing is that it lacked a certain polish as far as its digital integration. Like, I wish that my crew could have entered their emails somewhere, and as we ended up getting certain documents sent to us, rather than me manually downloading them, popping open my email interface, sending those emails off to them, that they would just be able to get those documents as they came out. Or being able to have some sort of baked in video call capacity or integration somewhere in there. None of it actually stopped us from having any fun, but I could see in the future having some extra levels of integration that makes it a more svelte system. But if those are our criticisms, our overall takeaway is that we had a great time. The puzzles were the right level of challenge in order to not make it so we were bored because they were easy, but at the same time, we didn't feel overwhelmed or like we were breaking our brains trying to figure something out. And like I said, the clue system was there as a nice backup. I think the delivery was done really well. The story was kitschy but engaging, and we ended up having a lot of fun. We kind of got into the spirit of things. My recommendation, if you don't think of this automatically going in, is bring a notebook. I mean, I took tons of notes on things, and all of us ended up doing that in one way or another. There's a compelling reason why you do that in order to assemble the information as you go, but I think that helps with the thematic immersion of feeling like you're these detectives trying to get to the bottom of a mystery. The setting was great. As someone in their mid-30s who's nostalgic for the early 90s, who had relatives who worked for the federal government, they kind of nailed an aesthetic there. And The best thing that I can say about it is that they pulled it off for $10 for people who are in our individual respective houses. Were able to, without a hitch, have a fun narrative puzzle mystery together in order to spend time together and have a great night. And since that's their objective and that's what I really wanted most out of it, they completely nailed it. So, like I said, we're planning on doing the rest of these. I had a great time. If you like puzzles and you don't mind integration of digital elements, then I think this is totally something that is worth checking out, and I know I'm going to be checking out more myself. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.